Little shovel pass. Henry, did he get it with that second effort?
Following the game against the Colts on Sunday, in the overtime thriller, it is reported that Derrick Henry may have suffered a Jones fracture. Now, after looking at the game itself and looking at the specific place in which he was engaged in, there was no specific hit or significant impact or anything that I could see during the game that impacted his performance. It was actually very impressive that he was able to play all 4 quarters and especially overtime and finish off the game considering what has transitioned. Now, he must have been feeling pain inside that foot following the game. Therefore, they're doing precautionary measures. We're going to order some sort of MRI or X-ray of that foot. After imaging, it was apparent that he did suffer what's called a Jones fracture. Now, a Jones fracture is usually a fracture at the base of the 5th metatarsal. The 5th metatarsal lives on the outside of your foot. Now, there can be 3 types of fractures that actually happen on the base of the 5th of the metatarsal. A stress fracture can happen, which is usually at the mid shaft of the bone. The Jones fracture usually here is at the base, and it's more of a longitudinal, so it goes up and down like this, giving you a fractured site. The other fracture that can happen is we call it an avulsion fracture. The avulsion fracture usually is where the outside muscle of the peroneus brevis comes and inserts at this blue period here, right on the base of the 5th. Sometimes what can happen is that it becomes a avulse or it pulls off that bony site, thus fracturing that region. Now, there were no reports that indicated that he suffered an avulsion fracture. More reports indicate that he suffered a Jones fracture. Usually in a Jones fracture, the surgical technique in which was going to be employed is going to be a screw fixation. The screw fixation is going to happen right here at the base of the 5th. It's going to be inserted through the shaft to give it support. It is more common that this bone does not have a really good chance of healing because of how much weight bearing we put through it. Therefore, having that screw fixation is going to give it that opportunity to heal better. Now, what they're also going to include, they're just going to also insert some fluid inside there to allow with healing of that bone. In the event of a Jones fracture, and with Derrick Henry's specific rehab protocol, it's usually going to involve what we call an 8 to 10 week recovery period. Weeks 0 through 2 is going to usually involve non-weight bearing in a splint. Weeks 2 through 4, now we're actually progressing that weight bearing. We're actually going to get him into an actual cam boot, we call, so he can start walking. In weeks 4 to 6 is when we're going to start to transition him into running. We're going to transition him to a running shoe, making sure he has an orthotic or something that keeps that base of the 5th metatarsal in place and supported during his progression to running. Now, weeks 6 to 8, now he's beginning sport-specific drills. Now he's doing dynamic strength. Can he do very specific functional activities that are required during football? Running forward, running backwards, moving laterally to the sides. Can he cut? Can he decelerate? Can he accelerate? Can he perform specific plyometric? Can he jump? Can he run while jumping? Can he do all those activities without any pain? Usually that takes around 2 weeks. Weeks 8 to 10, now we're looking at going into return to play. Now he's going into sport-specific drills that are more high intense, more practices underneath his belts, and now into a conditioning level. Weeks 9 and 10, you're looking at return to play with the specific shoe orthotic. In the event of Derrick Henry, I anticipate more of an 8 to 10 week recovery, considering how dynamic and how impactful he is on that field. More in a sense of how much power and strength he drives through his foot, through the ground, and how much forces are actually placed upon his foot during the time of play. Closely monitor reports to ensure that he is making recovery through the weeks and there are no setbacks through his practice and his recovery. We'll be closely monitoring reports to ensure that he is making good recovery and he has a good chance to miss the entire season, however, come back for playoff season.